Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vintage Super League. With Scott Vargas here with the leader of the pack, David Ochoa. You're at 6-1 now. You're miles ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, for the moment. I mean, doesn't matter how far ahead I am until the dust settles and the single elimination rounds are completed.
Yeah, that is true. I see you're going incognito today as you're as you're switching off your camera as to not reveal your secrets.
Oh
Uh,
my, look at that.
but we're about to watch Tom Martell, who's just in the booth with me, battle Eric Froehlich with a basically the same matchup that Tom played last week. Eric and I are playing a very similar standstill list. We have a key difference. He has a Mox Ruby in his sideboard, and I have a Mox Emerald in my sideboard. So we went back and forth as to which one was better, but we both went a different direction. And Tom is playing, of course, the Workshop deck, the Ensnare and Bridge version. So much like what I've been playing up until now, actually.
Yeah, I remember looking over the list and it seemed like strikingly similar, and that's also kind of where I got my list was from the list that Efro played. I was looking for a stronger prison variant, and so I was searching for a while, and then eventually I looked back to Efro's list and I thought, oh wow, this has got pretty much like close to everything that I want into it. And then I made a little bit of changes to the sideboard, moved a few of the shop's cards out so I could put more Dredge Hate in, because I figured that someone would probably pull the trigger on it, and ended up being Randy, which makes me happy that I got a bunch of Leylands and.
Oh, are you playing Randy next week?
Yeah, so next week I was supposed to play Chris this week, but he got trapped on some travel trip and couldn't get back. But I'm playing Chris next week, and then my normal match will be Randy, the final one.
Gotcha. So yeah, both Chris and Bob dodged you for a week, but eventually the Ocho comes calling.
Yeah.
uh, and I think that even though Efro and I built our deck with workshops in mind, the fact is when you lose to workshops, you don't actually get to cast your hate cards. So cards like Energy Flux sometimes just end up never hitting the table, which is what happened in my match, and I guess Efro is hoping do not happen in his.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing. Like, you can play all these cool cards, but if you can't actually cast them, then they don't end up any good. That's why the die roll is so huge, and all of your artifact acceleration, and then that's why Null Rod is so great. But something like Energy Flux is quite a beating if you get to land it, and that's you have to balance what you're bringing in. Also, like, these expensive cards are great and all, but if you can play some cheaper cantrips that will smooth out your draws, and I kind of like that more often. You had
we've seen very few like preordained Gush type decks, and in fact, Fro and I aren't even playing Gush in our deck. But yeah, there have been a lot of sphere effects floating around, and a lot of Dark Petitions. Both those tend to punish the preordained decks a bit.
Yeah, it's a kind of a rough spot to be in for Vintage right now. It's like, you can play against one or the other to prep for, but then you also have Dredge to keep in mind, and it really stretches your sideboard, so you can't cover all the angles.
Yeah, I mean, I think even though as I've gone on record, I do think that Shops and Storm are a little better than the rest of the field. I do think that you can play other decks. It's just you have to pick your battles. Like, you can build a deck that can beat one of those decks, or maybe both, but then you end up playing a deck that's poor against Oath or Dredge or other things like that.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
Kind of depends on like how well your deck is set up normally. So if you can have a good main deck against one of the decks and hopefully sideboard against the other two, and I mean that's ideal, but has not been discovered yet, or at least been popularized too much. So we'll have to wait and see.
So it looks like the players are ready. So let's head down to the match.
Yeah, sounds good.
Can we talk to the logo? All right, so we've got. Looks like Tom won the roll and has a great opening hand of a turn one lodestone golem. Unfortunately for him, he's got one ancient tomb instead of a workshop, so he can't quite go thorn plus or lodestone into thorn here. On the other hand, Ephra's hand is, I would say, kind of medium, but it actually might be keepable. It's interesting. Yeah, because you get to force the first play wasteland and swords. That's not actually that bad.
I actually like going Lotus, or I like leading off with Lotus, and then playing Ancient Tomb,
And then thorn.
and then play, or I'm sorry, playing. Actually, no, that wouldn't work out. Never mind. Um, I thought that you could get the Thorn in play to stop a sphere, because then you could have Crucible or to stop Forest of Will. So then you have the Crucible to stop a Wasteland, but that's not the case. But it looks like Ifro drew a blue source, which is pretty good. If his opening hand, I would probably keep that just because Plow is so good against Golem and Wasteland is good against Shop.
Yeah, it also standstill is a pretty good card in spots like this, where if you run it out, you get to end up drawing 3 because Tom is under more pressure to play something.
Yeah,
I actually think this is a matchup where Eric could play a standstill and even be content breaking it like 7 or 8 turns later. Like if both players just play lands for a bunch of turns, that's that, and then Eric breaks the end of Tom's turn. That's not too bad.
yeah, especially when Eric has a bunch of cool sideboard cards like Energy Flux, just real backbreakers, or you main deck Crucible.
Yeah, you're right. It is much more true post board. Here, it's actually really funny. Both players have Crucible of Worlds, so we might actually see a Crucible battle next turn. Because Tom is going to get to resolve his with the Ancient Tomb, and Eric is then going to get to resolve his own.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting in that, depending on how many spheres Tom plays, he's not actually going to be able to land a threat, so you're just going to have that sort of back and forth. And eventually, you have how many moxes each player draws is going to influence that. But Tom has more double lands uh, which will allow him to sort of jump ahead in terms of mana. So if he can draw those and then draw into a threat, he'll be in a pretty good spot.
On the other hand, Eric has more basics. So the fact that Eric is on, let's see, 3 islands in his main deck means that he can at least build up a few more basics in play. So it's funny because they both have ways to kind of skip ahead on mana.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the top of the Ephra's deck is being very kind. He got a second source of plowshares, which is...
I don't know if that's too bad. It depends, though, because Tom is likely to play this Chalice for 1 here, which will actually be pretty annoying for Ephra.
How many 1 casting cost spells does Ephra have? Is it...
He's got a Sensei's Dividing Top, he's got an Ancestral, and 3 swords, plus Preordain and Ponder. So 7 plus like cards or 8 plus Brainstorm. But because I'm not counting cards like Mental Misstep and Spell Pierce, which I don't think are particularly relevant. Actually,
yeah.
if I'm Tom here, I might be tempted to. He could play He could play Smokestack. I think he's gonna play Chalice though if he played the Wasteland.
I like getting the Smokestack in play. Just because it lets you get the Crucible off the table, sort of. I mean, you're going to be sacrificing 1 less permanent every turn. Although he could just wait to ensure that he has more opportunity to make it so that he's locking Ephra out of casting those 1-mana spells. But I like Smokestack against this type of deck generally.
Wow, this is gonna be weird. If they, if Ifro plays a standstill, like neither player can do anything. I guess. Like, what happens then? I guess it's probably still good for Ifro because he can just set up a turn where he plays Mentor and a bunch of monks, and then Tom's gonna have trouble playing Bridge and emptying his hand. Wow, this is a very strange confluence of factors here.
Yeah, the Crucible mirror ends up being pretty weird.
Yeah, and this is game one. Post board. The funny thing is, actually, the only person who can remove a Crucible is Tom. He's got Spine of Ishsa, but everyone post board Ifra has Disenchant, and of course Energy Flux, which does change things.
Yeah, given enough Moxes and Solarian Academy or Mutu's Workshop, then that Spine is gonna be a real backbreaker.
Yes. So here comes the Chalice on one, which Tom knows he can resolve. Because of the Thorn, Tom could have resolved either Chalice or Smokestack here.
Yeah, and this Chalice is gonna start setting up a point where Ifro is not going to be able to keep his creatures away, like any lodestone golems or revokers that end up being drawn by Tom.
Did Tom not play a land that turn?
I'm not sure.
Tom played a Crucible, which requires 4 mana, and then next turn he wastelanded, going down to 3 mana. I think he missed a land drop. Unless I'm doing something wrong, but with a Thorn out, he had to have the 4 already last turn to cast Crucible. Oh, did he double waste? No, he could not. Oh, I guess he double wasted. Okay, there we go. That makes more sense. Yes.
Yeah, that's
all right. So now Eric's got the standstill, so Tom can play Wasteland out of his graveyard, attack for 2, or he can waste the Wasteland and attack for 2. But either way, Eric's going to have Wasteland for Factory next turn. So
yeah, each player has lands in their graveyard that they want to get rid of. So there's that back and forth. Unfortunately, Ifra doesn't have any spells that he can actually cast, so it's going to be interesting.
That's one advantage to playing Standstill. Ifra can't cast anything anyway.
Yeah.
To Tom paying 2 life to deal 2 damage here.
Yeah, it's unclear whether or not that's actually good. I would prefer to have more life if I've got the Ancient Tomb, I think. Just because you're not being pressured at all, and you want to be able to cast your spells and not have to worry about opposing Mishra's Factories or stuff like that. Although Ifra's deck doesn't really put much of a clock quickly, with the exception of Mentor, but he doesn't have that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, both players are just going to pass back and forth. It's got to be right for one of them to break Standstill.
Yeah.
I mean, because the thing is, taken to the point of absurdity, let's say we go 40 more turns, Ifro can deck Tom by playing an instant on Tom's turn, or basically in response to anything Tom does, playing an instant, so to force Tom to draw cards off Standstill, which I've seen games come down to. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah, there have been some games. I was remembering back to that opening hand from last round where I saw Memories Journey and Ancient Grudge and thinking of this sweet draft.
Oh, yeah. That was a classic draft match where Webb and I played an Innistrad, and we were both playing Grixis Control, and we just both sided in Ancient Grudges and a Memories Journey to kill opposing Grimoires of the Dead, and just it was absurd.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so Ifro can use those standstills to force Tom to draw 12. I mean, he can assemble standstill, ancestral recall, and if that game, oh look, well there's a strip mine. That's gonna suck.
It's gonna kill the island. It just means that Ifro can't build up basics, but Ifro can still kind of build up fetch lands if he wants.
Yeah. But each fetch land that he plays is another hit that he's going to take from factory, which
Yeah.
could become an issue.
So Tom drew Lodestone. So if Tom wants, he can play a Lodestone Golem here. One advantage to that is he knows Ephro can't cast Sword Suppliers. I don't know. If I'm Tom, I'm kind of tempted to just go land Lodestone and see what Ephro does in response. I guess he's worried about a counterspell at that point, but Ephro really isn't going to be able to cast Manager in this game. It's going to be very difficult. And you can't cast Swords. Ephro has a lot more dead cards than Tom. So I think, I don't know, it might be in Tom's best interest to try to, like, I guess he actually doesn't mind making the game get prolonged because Ephro has more bad cards to draw into. This is an absurd game. This is gearing up to be one of the most absurd games we've seen in the VSL.
Yeah, this is again, Crucible mirrors are quite interesting, especially when like one of them's a blue deck. But if Tom plays the Lodestone Golem now, then he can pretty much rest assured that Eric is not going to be able to play like anything like a Jace, because he just doesn't, unless he draws into an Academy if he's playing that, or
No Academy.
Or a Lotus.
Yeah.
So he has that angle covered. He has the Swords of Plowshare angle covered. So you've got to run that out right now, I think.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to play the Lodestone, but it looks like Tom is going with the route of just strip mining each turn.
Yeah.
The thing that Tom doesn't know is that this gives Eric more time to draw into cards like Force of Will, which I think is what he wants to hit more than most other cards. Though Black Lotus would also be interesting because that might let Eric play a Jace. And Tom doesn't have a ton of great answers to Jace, though I guess with the Chalice out, then Tom's 4 Phyrexian Revokers can stop Jace.
Yeah, so you got any of the Revokers, and here's a second Lodestone Golem. So Tom is kind of in the position where like, I think that for the longer the game goes on, the worse it's getting off for him, just because Ephro can't cast anything that really concerns him at the moment. He doesn't have enough mana. I mean, the more draw steps that go by, the higher likelihood it is that Eric is going to draw like a Force of Will, and this game isn't. I think it's going to be better for Tom if he plays the short version of it.
So, Tom essentially still wastelanding Eric, just doing so by attacking with Mishra's Factory, but that's just like strip mining, except you give Eric the choice. Of course, you can't strip mine Flooded Strand, so that does make sense.
Yeah, well, you can. Just
it's not advisable. No rod not actually bad. I like it from Tom's side. I mean, not saying he's going to cast it over casting a Lodestone, but the advantage of No Rod is that it stops Eric from his like Lotus into Jace or Mentor plays.
Yeah, that No Rod is something that he really wants to resolve, and the question is, if he's going to start casting spells, which where do you think he's going to cast it? Is he going to cast a Golem, or is he going to cast a No Rod? I would be inclined to cast a No Rod, because that really starts to put a lock around this game more than the Golem will. Eric could draw Lotus there and go Lotus Chase, bounce your Golem, or Academy.
Academy's big.
That's good, yeah.
Now Tom's got a big standstill, right? Because he can go Mox Academy for 4, Golem, and No Rod in the same turn.
Yeah, that's pretty tempting.
So
it looks like he doesn't want to pull the trigger just yet, since he played that Mishra's Factory. And so...
Now you're presumably going to wasteland again. The thing is, I think Tom is better in this situation. He's got more outs to do big things or to play multiple threats in the same turn.
Well, since he was able to get the Academy, he discarded the null rod. That's
Oh wow, I would not. I don't think I would have.
interesting. I
I
would
would
not have
have.
done that.
Yeah, Norod's actually good. You can also discard lands. You know, you've got a Crucible in play.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so you've got Revoker here, which is something, but he doesn't have that null rod anymore. So I'm kind of curious what Tom's game plan is, what he's
Yeah,
trying
like
to
at some
assemble
point he's
for.
gonna have to do something, right?
Yeah, he's just going to keep on discarding lands, and as you can see, Ephra's drawn into a mentor now, and unfortunately no force will. So if Tom starts to play spells, he's going to not be able to stop him unless he draws into a forcible off those 3 from the standstill.
It's funny that Tom's discarding spells and Eric's discarding lands.
Yeah.
Here we go again. Either player would kill for an exploration. They would win the game very easily if they had one of those in play.
Oh, believe me, I've looked over Gatherer for a colorless exploration card, and it's not there. Like Terrain Generator is about your best option. Just so you can break this Wasteland Crucible Mirror.
I think if Tom could see Ephra's hand, he'd be going for more. Ephra's got no castable spells in hand. He's got a Jason and Mentor, 3 1-drops, and 2 standstills. Like, if Tom just goes, break standstill by going Mox, Golem, Revoke, like, you can play all those cards at the same turn, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, yeah. He's got to be pretty close, though. I mean, he's got.
I guess he can't play both Golems and Revoker in the same turn, I don't think, but it's still pretty close. Force of Will is a good draw. That's the card Eric's looking for the most.
Yeah. So he's probably going to start discarding 1 casting cost spells that are blue.
I would imagine, yeah, swords.
Yeah, I'm just kind of interested in what Tom's game plan is, because his lines have been questionable from my viewpoint.
I just want to know what Tom is planning for, because I think Tom can still have the much more explosive turn of the two. But I'm curious, like, what is he building up towards? His hand looks pretty close to optimal. Like, once you start having to discard cards that you want to keep, it gets a little harder to justify. Though Ensnaring Bridge, not really what you're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, he still has 1 slot in his hand that's being occupied by the Tolarian Academy, and nothing in Ephra's list can get rid of that Crucible, so he's pretty safe in discarding it. And he's going to get to the point where he can have a really explosive turn with the help of his Moxes in the Academy, but it's just hard to have enough spaces in your hand to have everything work out like that.
You know what's going to be funny is if Eric draws Mindbreak Trap. He's got 1 of those. I think Mindbreak Trap's actually going to be good here.
Oh yeah, it's a counterspell you can play.
So Tom's discarding Soaring. I guess that's not very good with the Chalice out.
Yeah.
Well, Tom seems to be settled into a routine, which kind of forces Eric to do the same.
Yeah, it's how much damage does Eric want to take, and both sides have Wastelands, so if Eric doesn't want to use Time Walk, that's not bad. That'll at least get you 1 step ahead.
Yeah, it just means that if Tom breaks the standstill, Eric might be able to string together a Mentor plus Time Walk turn.
Yeah, for as long as his Moxes are live, then that'll end up being good. But Eric might have to play the Time Walk to be able to cast the Mentor if another Sphere effect comes down.
Yeah, this it's kind of on Tom here. Eric has no profitable way to break standstill, so it's really on Tom to do that. Ooh, did Tom discard Academy? Because yes, you can play Academy out of your graveyard with Crucible, but one of the disadvantages to discarding is you let Eric know that it's coming.
Yeah, but there's another null rod. Hopefully, he doesn't discard this one. We'll
Oh,
see.
he will. He discarded the last one. He discarded Revoker too, which I actually think is pretty decent.
Yeah, Revoker's good here, but again, he doesn't appear to be wanting to keep any spells.
So, I mean, at some point, decking becomes a concern in another, I don't know, 20 turns or so.
Yeah, those standstills are gonna do some work. That's for sure.
Well, what can happen here is if it does turn into that, Eric can end of turn break a standstill. Tom has to draw three. Then Eric untaps and goes standstill, make you draw three. Standstill, make you draw three.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Although I think one of the standstills is that Eric Drew got discarded.
Yeah, he's got one left in his deck, one in his hand, one in play, one in his graveyard. It's like Hedron alignment. He's got them all lined up.
Yes.
Oh, for a second I thought Tom was going to do something else, but no, we're crisis averted. We're back to factory attacking. I was worried.
Yeah, the only thing that's being produced out of those factories is the same line of play.
Yeah. It's a Mishra's factory of sadness. So Eric breaking serve here, cracking a fetch land. I don't know what that does for him. I mean, it thins his deck. I guess it exposes his land to a strip mine, but that's not particularly relevant. There's a strip mine, which is the same as Wasteland.
Yep, pretty much. Another null rod. All right, the final one.
Well, let's see if Tom can get all his null rods into the graveyard. Then they will certainly not do anything.
Yes. They won't do anything. They won't do nothing. They'll be at the bottom.
There they go. All right, Ancestral Recall. You actually kind of want to keep that one because it's an instant. Eric doesn't actually have that many instants he can play unprompted at the end of Tom's turn. I know it gets countered by Chalice, but we're talking about breaking standstill fodder here.
Yeah, if Tom sort of sniffs out Eric's plan, then he'll and starts playing an artifact. Eric would want to have an instant that he can play in response to that, just so he doesn't get decked. Which is why he may want to hold on to a Swords of Plowshares if there's another one of those in his deck.
You might want to discard Jace here. It's possible depending on what he draws. Clearly, if he draws lands, he'd rather just discard lands.
Yeah, his lands are safe. Neither player.
As much as I don't want to experience it, we might end up with a match going to time.
Well, in that case, Tom's in a pretty bad spot because since he's 9 minutes behind.
It's possible he had to hold the clock before when we were doing commentary, which,
Oh, yeah.
if true, I'm sure Tom wouldn't bring up.
No, that's not something that he would bring up at all.
What can Tom draw that would make him play differently here?
Let's see.
Well, he played a strip mine.
I mean,
Okay.
Strip Mine and Mishra's Factory are pretty much the same thing, though. Okay. Once Tom plays the Academy, that's when he's decided that he's going to play something different. But until then, like Mishra's Factory, Wasteland, Strip Mine, they're both kind of similar.
Yeah.
And they're starting to get down to the point where even like Mishra's Factory might not be fast enough, depending on like how often Tom is attacking with them, like versus the number of cards in his deck versus standstills. But I think if I were Tom, I would just want to break the standstill right now.
Yeah, I've liked Tom. I like Tom breaking standstill many turns ago. It's actually gotten to the point where I don't know if it's great for him if he does. But I would also like him to break the standstill now, so I could see something happen.
Yes. Something other than what's been happening for the last 25 turns.
It is turn 27. This might be the long. This has to be the longest game we've ever had in VSL history, right? Even the Shop's
Close
mirror
to it.
didn't even come close to 30 turns.
Yeah. It's probably got the record almost doubled or something close to that.
Let's see. Is Tom contemplating a different line of play here?
Nope.
It's
Just
funny. It's funny though. By both having strip mines up, then they can kind of make it a little harder for the opponent to use strip mine. Though I guess Ifro could just strip mine, and Tom can't do anything back. Yeah.
yeah, and that looks like he is what he's gonna do. And the academy still gets you out of this. Like you can go factory, Mox, something like Revoker on Emerald.
All right. Eric playing a Tundra now. So again, both players are playing like different lands these last couple turns, but the other player can just play like their Wasteland or their Strip Mine, and it's like they didn't do that.
Right. I mean, since both players have access to an effective strip mine or literal, and then it's basically, I mean, your land drops are at parity, and again, it just comes down to Moxen, and Tom could control that with Nullrod, but that's not the case anymore. So it ends up being like Revokers, but I don't know how many more of those he has.
Tom discarded a bunch of those too.
Yeah, and then it comes down to Golems. So it's a given how the game was played so far, it's going to be more and more difficult for Tom to win this outside of decking because he's gone through so many of those cards that would break that mana stalemate parity. And
Just no one wants to break the standstill. No one wants to let their opponent draw 3 cards.
yeah, the cards don't matter except for like, force of will and acceleration.
They both discarded 7 times. They could have just broken the standstill here. It's very funny. I don't know what would be right in this situation. It feels like Tom should be able to leverage Academy and by playing a bunch of Moxen to just out mana Ifro so much that he wins the game here. So it feels like that even if Tom, yeah, that feels like that's Tom's best chance of winning.
Yeah, I mean you can go Mox, Academy, and that ends up being 9 mana, I think.
Mm-hmm.
3, 6 Mox. Yeah, it ends up being 9 mana, so he can go Trinisphere, or he can go Golem, or double threat. He doesn't have too many of those cards though. I mean, he's got the. He can't go like Revoker, Trinisphere, Golem.
I think what it really just comes down to is that Ifro can't generate a ton of mana. Just his deck's not set up to do that. And if Tom goes Mox, or I guess Academy, like he can just like Tom can just dump his whole hand in like 2 turns.
Yeah, and once those Moxes are in play, then the Crucible getting rid of the Academy is not going to do anything. Tom will still be able to replay it and go double threat on the next turn. So assuming that Tom can do that 2 turns in a row, then that will generate enough pressure to where Eric is not able to come out of that.
Yeah.
But right now, Tom doesn't have that many threats. He's only got the 2 golems, and then short of the transfer. For each golem that doesn't resolve, the transfer ends up being worse and worse.
Sensei's Dividing Top. It's a shame there's a Chalice on 1-out. The only way this game could get better is if Eric had a Sensei's Divining Top in play and was activating it multiple times a turn.
Yeah, that would be pretty sweet. All right, well, Tom can go. He still has that same line where he can go have access to 9 mana, and that second Thorn would be kind of useful because it'll allow him to go like Thorn, Golem, and then the turn after that, Trinisphere, Wasteland, your land, Golem. But yeah, we'll see what he decides to do.
Yeah. Well, every turn Tom thinks in it, it looks like he might actually break the standstill. He ends up not doing so.
Yeah, drawing that Thorn makes him want to do that more. And you have to think that, or assume that Eric knows about Tolarian Academy and how it could be a threat. And so that Tom hiding the fact that he has his academy is going to get less and less useful just because Tom has gone through 2/3 of his deck. So it's more likely that he's seen it than not.
Yeah, the other thing is, whether Eric knows about Academy or not, he can't do anything about it. He can't stop it. So
Yeah.
Tom is using some precious clock equity here, which has to mean that he's going to do something, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I suspect that is the case.
Okay, there's a Mishra's Workshop. I guess that's where it starts.
But the workshop is just worse than Academy.
Yeah. Also, Tom passed his turn. Well, I'm glad we settled that at least.
Yeah. So he's probably going to go for it next turn, and is hoping that Eric is going to leave his workshop alone, which I don't think is going to be the case.
It's so funny too because both players could be wasting each other. Neither does for a few turns, which means that one of the two probably should have been wasting the other player. It's just not clear who it is.
Yeah. And there goes the Wasteland, so...
Tom really does not want to get mana drained.
No. Mana drain would be pretty brutal.
Tom drew the spine of Ishsab, but he Cook revealed that he doesn't have the spine and discarded it. So...
Yeah, in the same line that he ends up... Ooh, no Mox. Just discarding all those good artifacts.
So Tom's down to 19 cards and Ephra's on 16.
Yep, it's going to be interesting. This game will be over one way or the other, somewhat quickly, or in a more quick fashion than it's gone.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with your assertions about it being interesting and over quickly.
No, it's interesting to talk about. The literal gameplay has not been interesting, but the possibilities have been more interesting than that, which is to say
I do think this is an interesting thought experiment, like an interesting puzzle. It's not clear to me where it's supposed to go from here, and it would be cool to see kind of those paths explored.
Yeah.
Ooh, Mindbreak Trap is a good one.
Yeah, it's going to counter something big. Well, on Eric now.
No, he has to decide what to discard because this is a kind of punishing discard step. He kind of needs all these cards. I guess he's off the standstill plan. He's only got one standstill left in his deck here. This game is absurd, by the way.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah. So they're the 5 Moxes. So Tom can generate. He's got 5, 6. Those. That's going to be 8 off the Academy. So it's going to be what, 14. So he can go Trinisphere, Golem in different phases. But then Force of Will gets Trinisphere, or Trinisphere resolves because Eric can counter one.
All right, standstill's getting broken.
Okay, finally. So what Tom is probably going to do now is use all of his lands to get these Moxes in place so he can play around with different phases in terms of playing around something. Unfortunately for him, Eric has a bunch of Force of Wills, which will be good, and a Mind Break Trap. And this Mind Break Trap is going to get rid of
Mind Break Trap's actually going to be awesome. So Fro draws all those cards. Tom has enough mana to... Let's see. If he leads with Trinisphere, Fro almost assuredly wants to counter it. You know, the one thing that's kind of unfortunate for Tom in this regard is he has given Ifro the opportunity to cast Mana Drain. Unfortunately for Eric, he doesn't actually have the Mana Drain. Mana Drain would be so good right now.
Yeah. Mana Drain would be a delight. So, the Academy is here to make 7 mana.
Yeah, now Ifro goes, force your second Golem, play Mentor, and then Tom is actually in trouble.
Yeah. There are no more threats to draw into, or very few. And Tom doesn't have any Wastelands in play at the moment, so he's not going to be able to keep Eric off of that time walk.
The funny thing is, despite the pace of the game, that was actually a lightning fast turn.
Yeah. There were more spells played in that turn sequence than all the other turn sequences. Pretty much.
Yes, more spells got played that turn than any other turn of the game. So now out comes Mentor. Ifro leaving up all Wastelands. And there we go. The game ended. I barely believe it happened.
Yeah. I would have liked to see Tom pull the trigger earlier, but I'm sure he had his reasons. And so, moving on, we get to see that Tom is going to be on the play and is probably going to be taking out some mediocre cards, some bad cards, and putting in good cards. And it looks like he's probably going to bring in stuff like Spine.
Can you elaborate on the sideboard strategy of taking out the bad cards and putting in the good ones?
Oh yeah, it's tried and true. Bad cards out, good cards in. And so I would approach this like a prison mirror, basically. I mean, you've got Crucibles on both sides, so Spine ends up being pretty good. Graveyard Hate is also pretty good. It's just so it lets you break the Crucible symmetry.
Yeah, I don't know if Tom can afford Leylines, though, because Energy Flux is the card he really has to worry about at this point.
Yeah. Energy Flux is a big one. And I mean, aside from Energy Flux, do you know how many Eric has?
Eric has 4.
4? Yeah, that's pretty big.
He's 4 Energy Flux, 2 Disenchant, and a Mox Ruby for the the great sideboard tech.
Yeah, Mox Ruby / Mox Pearl. or Emerald.
Mox Emerald is the one.
Yeah.
All right, so
Ooh.
Tom opened with Lotus again. What does this hand do? This hand has to be good. Eric's hand is not. Eric's hand, I think, is quite bad. But Tom's hand has some combination of turn 1 Sphere, Null Chalice. The Null means Chalice 0 is not quite as effective. It's possible Tom wants to go like Lotus, Chalice for 1, Sphere. Tom could also just play a turn 1 Smokestack and a Chalice for 0. That actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I like that. The Chalice is going to let you get a like a free sack off that Smokestack, and Smokestack is one of the most problematic cards for this style of deck. Although it looks like Tom is going with Sphere first of all.
Do you like Wastelanding here?
Yes.
Yeah. Given the Sphere in play, I kind of like Wasteland. Like, Tom, I think, would have likely played a Workshop if he had one.
Depending on how his hand was set up, maybe.
Tom immediately draws a 0 drop. The saving grace for Eric's hand here is that he's got a lot of lands. He can just make his land drops for the next bunch of turns.
Yeah, and that's one of the good things about Wastelanding there, is because since he doesn't have any Moxes, he's more. He has the option of throwing away a Wasteland, and it doesn't really hurt him nearly as much. And he's sort of banking on Tom having a hand that needs all those multi-lands to function.
Well, this could be difficult for Eric, though. Uh-oh. If he can just land the standstill, that's just lethal, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
The funny thing about this situation, too, is that Tom does not really want to sacrifice Chalice for 0 because he assumes it's holding off a card or 2 from Eric, but Eric actually just doesn't have any 0s.
Well, he can sack the Chalice and then just play the Null Rod. And
That's also true.
And then that lets him deploy the Mox Pearl. So he's +1 permanence there.
Oh, this is going to work out nicely for Eric. I would definitely Swords to Plowshares this factory.
Oh, yeah. Stone Rain him right out of the tournament. I mean, when you only get one land drop turn, getting rid of one of them is pretty good.
Tom didn't play a second factory. He couldn't pump his own factory. Well,
Yeah.
Force of Will, not a bad draw. It at least means that Tom's not going to resolve something else here.
Yeah, so Eric has Tom covered on that part until he gets until the Smokestack eats all of his lands, but it's going to be a while.
Tom actually took a risk here because he actually can't play the Null Rod. So if Eric had a bunch of Moxen, he could go off here, though he just doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's giving Eric window here is hopefully for Tom he's banking that Eric doesn't have any of very much acceleration in his hand, so he's just going to let the stack do its work.
At some point, Eric also has to give thought to not playing anything, to just intentionally skipping a land, to force Tom to either keep feeding Smokestack to no benefit or to sack the Smokestack.
Yeah, but that takes you off Force of Will also. But
yeah, that's problematic.
It is something that you have to balance.
Tom could let the Sphere go so he could play a Trinisphere.
If he ends up doing that, then you might see Eric just not play a land.
Well, Eric could also Force of Will a Trinisphere, and then untap, and then he'll have access to 3 mana, and just like play a Standstill, or if he draws like a Mox or something, play a Jace.
Yeah. But if Tom sacks the Sphere, then Eric isn't punished for just holding all lands in his hand. He can still cast Force of Will that way.
Yeah.
And so it ends up being like not as big of a deal. But this any Sphere effects, I suspect Eric is going to Force of Will.
Eric's basically got a Force of Will anything here. I mean, he's got a forcible like Lodestone or any sphere. I guess or a Crucible. He doesn't have to force of will Null Rod or like Phyrexian Revoker.
Yeah, those aren't as punishing.
So now Tom can't play anything because he's actually getting punished by his own sphere.
Yeah, and here you're probably going to see Eric just not play anything, I guess. Because he can play or maybe well, because he could play a land on his turn if he needs to force a will, because he'll have one open all the time, depending on how many basics he's got.
There goes the
Okay.
sphere. And then Snaring Bridge. So Tom can't play much. He's going to play a Revoker or a Null Rod here. So now Eric can play the Standstill. The cool interaction between Standstill and Smokestack is that if Tom doesn't play anything, you can then untap and just sack the Standstill. You kind of bought yourself a turn.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
it's either three in the grip or a land in the battlefield.
Lotus is interesting. It doesn't work because of Null Rod, but Tom doesn't know that you have Lotus. So Eric could play Standstill here, and then again set Tom up where Tom has to either sacrifice a land, a Smokestack, or a Null Rod. Like, no matter what, Tom's in trouble here. He basically can't sack a land, right?
No. Getting rid of a land is pretty horrible there.
And so now Eric can just sacrifice the Standstill and go Lotus Jace. Like, this looks great for Eric.
Yeah. Although that factory makes Jace not as good, but he can still use it to Fate Seal to make it so that he's getting more cards or higher card quality.
Right. I learned that last week when I did not plus Jace into Factory. That was not a great play.
Yeah. That was a line I probably would not have taken.
Let's just say I've made better plays.
A few. At least this dig through time's on now.
Yeah, Dig is on now too.
So it looks like Eric is going to go ahead and play Jace here, and I still think he probably plus it. No, so he just wants to brainstorm, and that ends up being pretty good. He hit a few moxes. So I assume that one of them is going to get put back. Then
he can just go Mox Mentor if you wanted to. I guess he's leaving up Dig. Tom's in a lot of trouble here. He has to get rid of Smokestack. He can't even play anything if he doesn't draw a land. Like, he can play a Revoker that stops Jace, but Eric's just going to dig in response.
Yeah. And this, I would just let this Revoker resolve.
I mean, you might as well dig first. You can just see what you hit.
Yeah. But even having said that, I would rather just try and hit something like Energy Flux or whatnot. And then you can always play Mentor and another spell.
The fact that you can play Mentor and multiple spells means that you don't really care about Jace all that much.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to establish a clock that's going to be a pretty quick one. And this Ensnaring Bridge is not really going to do anything, even if it were on the battlefield. Because Tom doesn't have any lands to cast spells. So it looks like there's a bunch of cantrips. And you could force a will here, but I would rather just go
Mentor and leave up Force for whatever Tom can play next.
Yeah. Just and if Eric draws a land, then that's even better. You can go Mentor, Mox, land, cantrip, and then he'll have so there's a Wasteland. That's really good.
Yeah, I would still cast Mentor into cantrip, but Wasteland is a good thing to have here.
Yeah. that cantrip is gonna, or that wasteland is gonna seal the deal.
Well, the
And there
deal
we have
has
it.
been sealed without it. So Eric wins a pretty unique match among the VSL here with, I think it was like a 40-turn game one, which is more than every other game by an incredibly wide margin. So I'm kind of curious as to if that's a benchmark. Hopefully that will never be beaten.
It is highly unlikely that there will be any other games that come close to having that many turns in it.
Yeah. So, uh, looks like our last match is going to be even more exciting. I hope. You're going to see
Yeah,
some standstills. You've got myself versus Steve Menendin here coming up in a couple minutes. So we're going to let them get set up, them being me. And we'll be back in a couple minutes with round 5 of this week's Vintage Super League.
yeah, Battle of the Two-Man Enchantments.